Okay. Andy Pratt is professor at City University London, and he's international renowned expert in the field of the creative city. And first things I would like to ask him, what will Milan gain from the Expo?
Yeah. This is a very difficult question, but what's interesting about it is that there are lots of different things that can be gained. So lots of different opportunities, but the question is which ones will be actually grasped. The Expo is a long-running phenomenon of exhibitions, and they provide an opportunity for cities to be the centre of the world's attention. Okay? So it's very good for promoting their identity, their visibility in the world. Okay? So these things are very important. But the question is, what more can be gained apart from being on the world stage? And here there are lots of opportunities to link with what goes on in everyday life in terms of the day-to-day creativity, ideas, design that is the life of Milano. And how do these get connected with the two? And I think this is one of the challenges of a large exposition of this sort, that it can be quite difficult to make that connection between them when you have a lot of large-scale investors and city authorities and national authorities all wanting to play part of this process. And therefore, it's the real challenge for Milan is to really promote its own activities rather than simply market itself. And I think, as other cities have found, that can be quite difficult to do. So the wonderful thing of being the host of the Expo is something that has both good things and bad things. And the problem is actually making sure you get more of the good things than the bad.
Right. You have experience of other expos, and you studied in depth, for instance, the Shanghai Expo. So what do you think Milano can learn by the other experiences?
I think one of the things that comes through many of these types of events is that whilst there are lots of attractive elements to them of promoting large-scale infrastructure change, and many cities use these sorts of expositions to bring forward plans that would never have happened for many, many years. Okay? But there is a tension there that you end up with lots of very interesting buildings or redeveloped parts of the city, but you don't animate them with people and the activities. That's a lot more difficult job to do. And I think the long-term planning that's required, working with the social and economic and cultural resources to actually bring them together so that they can inhabit this new space, is the lesson I think that's learned often, is that when you don't get that balance right, you end up with, unfortunately, buildings that never get used again, or that they aren't used in their best purposes. And in order to bring those two conflicting elements together, then I think you have to really start planning a lot earlier. Often it is that most of the effort goes into finishing the buildings for the exposition, and then only afterwards is the planning for the use of them. But I think where there's been more successful attempts, then that planning starts a lot earlier, and you build that into the process. Otherwise, you end up with often wasted buildings and wasted effort. And I think you can see not just expositions, often in expositions the buildings are actually destroyed afterwards, but the Olympics is another classic example, these special facilities. But also it's one of the things that all cities these days are engaged in trying to promote themselves in various ways, and people like culture, so culture is a good way for doing that. And often we find what referred to in English as flagship developments are made. So these are these big things that everybody sees, the big buildings that everybody sees, and they may be art galleries or they may be opera houses, etc. But all of the money goes into the building of the infrastructure, and they can be fantastic. But then there is the problem of actually which artists are going to perform in them, and will they be supported? And this is, I guess, in the way that cities are financed. There's a difference between capital costs, that's the cost that you have for 1 year or 2 years to build a building, and revenue costs, which are the costs that you get every year to fund the artists, the musicians, and the managers of the place. And when those two things get separated, then you have problems. And I think that is a metaphor for the challenge of the Expo and the challenge of all cultural facilities in terms of culture-led urban regeneration.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.